I used to think neighborhoods were supposed to feel permanent. Not the houses themselves, those get repainted, remodeled, sold, but the people. The idea that you grow up alongside the same faces, that you know who lives where, that there's some kind of continuity holding everything together. That's not how it works here. On our street, people disappear, and then other people move in, and somehow, those two things are treated as completely unrelated. It happens often enough that you start measuring time by it, not by holidays or school years, but by who's gone and who's new. Someone vanishes, and within weeks, sometimes days, there's a moving truck parked in front of a house that used to belong to someone else. That's how it started this time, too. I noticed the truck before I noticed anything else. A long white rental, backed awkwardly into the driveway next door, its engine still running. The sound carried through my open bedroom window, low and steady, like breathing. I'd been sitting on my bed, half dressed in black like always, scrolling through my phone without really looking at anything. I didn't need to ask who it was for. The house next door was empty for exactly 3 weeks. 3 weeks since the last kid went missing. I leaned forward and pushed the curtain aside just enough to see without being obvious. 2 men climbed out of the truck, laughing about something I couldn't hear. A woman followed, holding a clipboard and pointing at the front door. A kid, maybe my age, stood on the sidewalk with their hands shoved deep into the pockets of an oversized hoodie, looking everywhere except the house they were about to live in. New faces. Across the street, the other house looked like it always did now. Lights on, curtains open, chairs on the porch. The parents of the girl who disappeared still sat outside most evenings, even when it was cold, even when it rained. They didn't talk much anymore. They just stayed. Like if they left, something important might slip through the cracks while they were gone. The neighborhood allowed this. It tolerated their grief, but it never joined it. No one sat with them. No one brought food. No one asked questions anymore. We waved when we passed. We looked away when we didn't. My little sister Emma burst into my room without knocking, like she always did. "They're moving in already," she said, climbing onto my bed and bouncing once, then twice. "That was fast." I didn't answer. Emma is 8 years old and thinks boredom is the worst thing that can happen to a person. "Sarah," she said, dragging my name out. "Can we go outside? There's nothing to do. Mom and Dad are at work and I already watched all my shows." "No," I said. She flopped backward dramatically, her hair spreading across my comforter. "You never want to hang out with me anymore." I didn't say what I was thinking, that hanging out outside felt like volunteering to be noticed. Instead, I said, "Go play in the backyard." She rolled onto her stomach and kicked her feet against my bed. "That's boring. There's nothing back there." That wasn't true. There was plenty back there, just nothing she wanted to see. Our parents worked long hours. They always had. It meant I was in charge most afternoons and evenings, which meant Emma followed me everywhere, like a shadow I couldn't shake. I loved her. That didn't mean I wanted to spend every waking moment entertaining her. "Later," I said. She sighed loudly, the way only kids can, and slid off the bed. "You always say that." She left my room, slamming the door just hard enough to be annoying, but not hard enough to get in trouble. I watched the moving truck again. The new family didn't look nervous. That's what struck me most. No one ever did. They always looked relieved, like they'd found something safe. Night came quietly. The streetlights flickered on one by one, casting soft orange halos across the pavement. The moving truck was gone by then. The new family's car sat in the driveway, its windshield reflecting the glow like an unblinking eye. I was lying on my bed, headphones on, but no music playing, when I heard it. A car. Loud. Music thumping, bass heavy and careless, the kind that makes windows vibrate. I sat up. The sound grew closer, then slowed. I moved to the window without thinking. Across the street, the front door of the grieving family's house opened. Their teenage daughter stepped out, phone pressed to her ear, hair pulled back like she was in a hurry. She glanced over her shoulder once, at the porch, at the empty chairs, then jogged down the steps. The car idled at the curb. She opened the passenger door and climbed in. That's when I saw the driver. He looked up. Our eyes met. It couldn't have been more than a second, maybe less, but it stretched, thin and electric, like a wire pulled too tight. The streetlight caught his face just right, washing everything in amber and shadow. And his eyes, they glowed. Not bright, not like headlights or neon, just wrong. A reflection that didn't match the light, a glimmer where there shouldn't have been one. The car sped off. The sound vanished down the street, swallowed by distance. I stayed at the window long after it was gone. Across the street, the porch chairs remained empty. The house was still lit. I didn't know it yet, but that was the last night things felt even remotely normal. And I didn't know his name, only that something had noticed me noticing. And that was enough. The police cars arrived 3 days later. They came in the middle of the afternoon, lights off, quiet, as if they didn't want to draw attention to themselves. 2 of them parked across the street from my bedroom window, blocking part of the driveway like they'd been there before, like this wasn't new. I noticed because I was watching. Emma didn't notice at first. She was on the floor of my room, surrounded by toys she hadn't touched in weeks, humming to herself and kicking her feet against the carpet. "Sarah," she said, not looking up, "can we go outside now?" "No," I said. She groaned. "You said later yesterday." "I know." "So when is later?" I didn't answer her. I was already at the window. The front door across the street was open. The girls' parents stood on the porch, one on either side of the doorway, like they were holding it open through sheer will. A police officer stood between them, his posture stiff, hands folded in front of him. Even from this distance, I saw it in their faces. Hope hadn't left yet, but it was packing. Emma followed my gaze and squinted. "Why are the cops there?" I swallowed. "I think something happened." The officers stayed for a long time. Long enough for the sun to slide lower in the sky. Long enough for neighbors to walk past pretending not to stare. Long enough for the porch chairs to be pulled closer together. When they finally left, the parents didn't move. They just stood there, staring at the street like it might explain itself. That's how I knew. She wasn't coming back. I thought about the car, about the music, about the boy who looked at me like he'd already decided something. I couldn't sit still anymore. "I'm going to tell them," I said suddenly. Emma blinked up at me. "Tell who?" "The police. I saw something." Her face lit up. "Can I come?" "No." She frowned. "Why not?" "Because you need to stay here." She crossed her arms. "That's not fair." I grabbed my hoodie from the back of my chair and slipped it on, my heart beating faster with every step toward the door. Emma followed me anyway. "You always do this," she said. "You never want me around when something interesting happens." "This isn't interesting," I said. "This is serious." She stopped in the hallway, hands on her hips. "You're just being weird." I reached for the door handle. "Sarah?" My mom's voice cut through the moment. She stood at the kitchen counter, purse slung over one shoulder, keys in her hand. She looked ready to leave. She always looked ready to leave. "Where are you going?" she asked. I hesitated. I saw something," I said. "The night she disappeared. A car. The guy driving it." My mom sighed. "You're always seeing things," she said gently. "You have a vivid imagination. That's not a bad thing, but this isn't the time." "But Mom, she's upset," Emma cut in. "She thinks the car was creepy." My mom glanced between us, then checked her watch. "I have to go," she said. "Sarah, entertain your sister. Don't let her wander, okay?" She kissed the top of my head and was gone before I could say anything else. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Emma grinned. "See? You're not going anywhere." I stared out the kitchen window. Across the street, the porch lights flicked on. The parents sat down. They didn't cry. They didn't yell. They just stayed. That night, I lay awake listening to the neighborhood breathe. Cars passed occasionally. Dogs barked somewhere far off. A TV murmured through an open window down the block. I thought about how quickly the moving truck had arrived next door, how the new family laughed while they unloaded boxes, how no one mentioned the girl anymore. I thought about the boy in the car. I didn't know his name, but I knew this much. Someone had taken her, and someone had decided she wouldn't be missed enough to stop it. I stared at the ceiling until my eyes burned. If no one else was going to notice, then I would. And this time, I wouldn't look away. I started carrying a notebook. It wasn't anything dramatic, just a small, spiral-bound thing I found in my desk drawer, the kind I used to use for school assignments I never finished. I didn't label it. I didn't decorate it. I just started writing things down. Dates, times, houses, disappearances. I didn't know what I was looking for yet, only that if I didn't write it down, I'd start convincing myself it wasn't real, that it was coincidence, that I was overreacting. Adults are very good at teaching you that skill. That afternoon, I sat on the front porch with the notebook balanced on my knee, pretending to watch Emma play in the yard. She was drawing with sidewalk chalk, humming loudly, stopping every few seconds to show me her work. "Look," she said, pointing to a crooked heart. "That one's you." "That doesn't look anything like me," I said. "It's symbolic," she replied, like she knew what that meant. I smiled despite myself and went back to the page. 3 disappearances in 4 months, I wrote. Same neighborhood radius. A shadow stretched across the driveway and I looked up. The car rolled slowly down the street with its windows open and music low this time. I recognized it immediately. Same dark paint, same shape, same feeling in my stomach. It slowed, then stopped. The driver's door opened, and the boy from the night before stepped out. He wore black jeans and a jacket too thin for the weather, and his hands were tucked casually into his pockets. He looked normal. That was the worst part. "Hey," he said. smiling like this was an accident. "Sorry, I didn't mean to startle you." I didn't answer. He glanced at Emma, then back at me. "Didn't know kids played outside here anymore." "They do," Emma said immediately. "I'm Emma. That's my sister Sarah." I snapped the notebook shut. "Emma," I said sharply, "go inside." She frowned. "Why?" "Now." She looked between us, annoyed, but she knew that tone. She stomped past me, muttering under her breath as she went. The boy watched her go. "She listens," he said. "Most of the time," I replied. He nodded, like he was filing that away. "I'm Isaac," he said. "I just moved in." "I know," I said. "I saw your car the other night." Something flickered in his eyes. "Did you?" he said lightly. "Yes." I stood up. "You were driving the night the girl across the street disappeared. I saw her get in your car." He laughed. "That's a serious thing to say to someone you don't know." "I know what I saw." He studied me then, really studied me. My clothes, my makeup, the way I stood like I expected the ground to move under me at any moment. "You're not scared," he said. "That's not true," I replied. "I just don't show it." "That's different," he said. "Most people show it even when they don't feel it." I didn't like the way he said, "most people." We stood there for a moment before he spoke again. "I like your style," he said finally. "You don't dress like anyone else around here." "That's because I don't want to be like anyone else around here." His smile widened. "Exactly." He told me he was new, that he didn't know anyone yet, that he was looking for people who got it, people who weren't afraid of darker things, death, stories, the stuff everyone else pretends doesn't exist. I should have told him to leave. Instead, I asked, "What do you want?" His answer came too easily. "To see you again." I said nothing. He got back into his car without pushing, without arguing. As he pulled away, he looked at me through the open window. "I'll see you around," he said. I didn't answer. The next day, he came back, and this time, he wasn't alone. The car stopped in the same place, but the passenger door opened first. A girl stepped out and walked toward me like she was already angry. She didn't hesitate. "You," she said, pointing at me. "What did you tell him?" "Excuse me?" She was close now, too close. Her eyes moved over me quickly, sharp and assessing. "I don't like liars," she said. "Elsie," Isaac said, getting out of the car. "Stop." He introduced her like it was a joke, like she wasn't vibrating with something dangerous. "My sister," he said. "She can be intense." "You accused my brother of having something to do with that missing girl." Elsie leaned in. I met her stare. "I'm not afraid of you," I said. Her lips twitched, not into a smile, something else. "That's unfortunate," she replied. She grabbed Isaac's sleeve and pulled him back toward the car. "We're leaving," she said. "Now." He hesitated, just for a second. "I'll see you around," he said again. "No, you won't," Elsie said. "And you better not." They drove away. I stood on the porch long after the sound of the engine faded. I didn't know who they were. Most importantly, I didn't know what they were. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. They hadn't come here by accident. And now, They knew I was paying attention. Once you start looking for patterns, it's hard to stop. They show up everywhere, on streets, in schedules, in the way people behave when they think no one's paying attention. Patterns don't announce themselves. They wait for you to notice. I started staying up later, not because I wanted to, but because sleep felt irresponsible, like something might happen while I wasn't watching and I'd miss it. My notebook filled faster than I expected. Names I found online, dates pulled from old news articles, addresses that felt too familiar once I wrote them down. It wasn't just our neighborhood, it was the ones next to it, and the ones after that. Kids disappearing every few months, sometimes every few weeks. Different ages, different backgrounds, different circumstances, but the same ending. Last seen leaving home, no signs of struggle, investigation ongoing. I circled locations on a printed map and taped it to my wall. The cluster around our street made my stomach tighten. Emma noticed, of course. "You're being weird again," she said one afternoon, standing in my doorway. "You never come outside anymore." "I'm busy." "With what?" I didn't answer. She watched me for a moment, then shrugged. "I'm going out anyway." I snapped my head up. "No, you're not." She rolled her eyes. "You're not Mom." "No," I said. "I'm the one who's here." She stared at me like she didn't recognize me anymore. That night, after Emma was asleep and the house was quiet, I slipped on my hoodie and eased the front door open. The air outside felt heavier than usual. Not cold, just weighted, like the street was holding its breath. I walked 3 houses down. The porch light was on. I hesitated only once before knocking. A man opened the door. He looked tired in the way people do when exhaustion has become permanent. His eyes flicked over me, uncertain. "Yes?" "I'm sorry," I said quickly. "I didn't mean to bother you. I had a question." He studied my face, then stepped aside slightly, not inviting me in, but not closing the door either. "My daughter," he said, before I could ask. "You're about her age." I nodded. "Did she ever talk about her friends?" I asked. "Anyone new?" He exhaled sharply, like the air had been trapped in his lungs too long. "There were 2, he said. "A boy and a girl. Siblings, I think. She met them not long before she left." My heart started to pound. "Do you know their names?" He shook his head. "No, but she said they were going to show her something. Some place." "What place?" He hesitated. "Old Farmer's Road." I froze. "The police checked it," he added quickly. "There's nothing there, just an abandoned stretch. Kids like to scare each other." I thanked him and backed away before he could say anything else. At the end of the street, a car idled. I didn't need to see the driver to know who it was. I approached slowly, every instinct screaming at me to turn around. Isaac sat behind the wheel, window down, elbow resting casually on the door. "You shouldn't be doing this," he said quietly. "Talking to people?" I asked. "Or walking outside?" "Both," he replied. "It's none of your business what I do." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Some things aren't meant to be understood," he said. "And some places really are just abandoned." "Old Farmer's Road," I said. He tilted his head. What about it? What is that place? Just somewhere to hang out. You want to go? Something shifted in his expression. Not fear, not anger. Calculation. Not with you. I turned and walked away before he could say anything else. Back in my room, I added another line to my notebook. Old Farmer's Road, mentioned in at least 4 cases. I stared at the words until they blurred. Outside, the street was quiet. Too quiet. I wondered if the pattern wasn't just about who disappeared, but about who didn't. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I told myself it was because they wouldn't understand, but that wasn't the truth. The truth was simpler. Saying it out loud would make it real. And if it was real, then I might talk myself out of it. So I waited until dusk. The house felt hollow as I slipped out, like it was already used to losing people. I kept my steps quiet, my hoodie pulled tight, my notebook left behind on my desk like a confession I wasn't ready to make. I took the bus, then another one, then I walked. Old Farmer's Road wasn't marked the way I expected it to be. No sign, no warning, just a stretch of cracked pavement branching off where the city thinned into trees and shadow. The air changed as soon as I stepped onto it. I stopped once, looked back toward the street I'd come from. The houses there were small and ordinary, their windows glowing softly. It would have been easy to turn around. Instead, I kept walking. The bridge came into view ahead of me, low, narrow, arched over a dark channel of water that didn't reflect the sky. Halfway across it, the sound of the city disappeared entirely. No traffic, no insects, no wind, just my footsteps. I felt it then, the sensation of being watched. It wasn't sudden, it didn't spike, it settled. A quiet pressure at the base of my skull, like a hand resting there. I told myself it was my imagination. I crossed the bridge. The road beyond dipped slightly, curving out of sight between trees that leaned too close together. The shadows there felt deeper, more deliberate, like they were waiting for something to enter them. That's when I heard a low sound, rough, close to the ground. I took one step back, then another as the growling grew louder. From the darkness ahead, something moved. At first, I thought it was a dog. A large one, maybe. Someone's pet that had wandered too far from home. Then it stepped fully into view. It was massive, too big. Its body was wrong, muscle stacked on muscle, joints bending with an ease that didn't belong to something that size. Its eyes burned red, not glowing like reflections, but lit from within, steady and intent. It stared straight at me. I turned and ran. The sound of its movement hit a second later. Heavy, fast, terrifyingly close. I didn't scream. I couldn't spare the breath. The bridge was right there. I could make it. I could make it. Something blurred past me from the left. Another shape. Just as large. Just as wrong. It slammed into the first creature with a force that knocked the air from my lungs. The sound was wet and violent. Bone against bone. Teeth snapping. Bodies colliding. They rolled into the brush, tearing through leaves and branches like the forest itself was being shredded. I stopped and didn't know why. I stood there, shaking, my mind refusing to assemble what my eyes were seeing. Two massive shapes tearing into each other, snarling and snapping, not for food or territory, but correction. Like one of them wasn't supposed to be doing what it was doing. I didn't wait to find out which one was which. I picked up my pace again and crossed the bridge. My lungs burned, my legs screamed, my thoughts splintered into nothing but motion. I didn't stop until the trees thinned and the sound of the city returned in a rush. Cars, distant voices, the hum of normal life, crashing back into place like it had always been there. I leaned against a streetlight and slid down until I was sitting on the curb, shaking so hard my teeth clicked together. I stayed there until I could breathe again. When I finally stood, I realized something worse than fear had settled into me. Whatever lived at Old Farmer's Road wasn't random. It wasn't mindless. I made it home long after dark. The house was quiet. Emma asleep. My parents still out. Everything exactly the way I'd left it. I went to my room and sat on my bed without turning on the light. I didn't write anything down. I didn't search anything online. I didn't try to explain it. I didn't dream. I waited for them. Nightmares, flashes of teeth and red eyes, the sound of bodies tearing through brush. But sleep came empty. When I woke, it felt like I'd never really gone under at all. My body knew what happened, even if my mind kept circling it like something dangerous it didn't want to touch. I lay still for a long time, staring at the ceiling. The house breathed around me. Pipes ticked. Somewhere down the hall, Emma snored softly, a sound so normal it hurt. Fragments replayed anyway. The growl, the weight of the air, the way the second creature had moved, not toward me, but toward the first. I sat up slowly, half expecting the room to feel different. It didn't. My posters still hung crooked on the walls. My clothes were still draped over the chair. My notebook sat on my desk, closed. Downstairs, my parents were already moving around the kitchen. I could hear my mom clinking dishes together, my dad flipping through the paper like nothing in the world had shifted overnight. I joined them at the table. My mom glanced at me over her coffee. "You look tired." "I didn't sleep much," I said. She nodded, like that explained everything. She poured herself more coffee, then paused. "Did you go out last night?" The question was casual, almost careless. "I thought I heard the door," she added. "No," I said immediately. The word came out clean, practiced. Emma looked up from her cereal. "You did too. You left." My mom frowned at her. "Emma?" "She did," Emma insisted. "I heard her." My dad folded the paper and stood. "You probably dreamed it." That was it. No argument, no suspicion. The truth slipped past them like it always did. My parents kissed us goodbye and left for work, already late, already distracted. I watched them through the front window until their car disappeared down the street. The silence afterward felt louder than anything I'd heard at Old Farmer's Road. Across the street, the grieving family was already awake. The father stood on the porch, arms crossed, staring at the road like it might open up and give him something back. The mother rearranged the chairs again, even though they were already perfectly straight. They did this every morning, and I understood it now. Staying wasn't denial, it was devotion. Leaving would mean admitting that whatever took their daughter wasn't coming back. Staying meant there was still a chance, even a small one, even an impossible one. Emma tugged on my sleeve. "Can we go outside now?" "Later," I said. She frowned. You always say that. I watched the street instead. Hours passed. The day moved on without me. Cars came and went. The new family next door laughed as they carried boxes inside. Someone down the block mowed their lawn. Nothing changed, and yet everything had. I felt different in my body, like I'd crossed a line and couldn't step back over it, like my bones had learned something my mouth couldn't repeat. I knew why Isaac had told me not to go. I knew why the police never found anything. I knew why some kids were taken and others weren't. Not because they were unlucky, but because someone had noticed them. I went back upstairs and sat on my bed, my back against the wall, eyes fixed on the window. I didn't pull the curtain aside. I didn't need to. The street was there whether I looked at it or not. Emma knocked softly and peeked in. "You okay?" "Yes," I said. She studied me for a moment, then nodded, accepting the answer even though it wasn't true. She went back downstairs. I stayed where I was. I didn't tell anyone what I saw at Old Farmer's Road. Not yet. Not until I figured it out for myself. Isaac's car was parked across the street when I woke up. It hadn't been there the night before. I was sure of that. I'd checked the street before going to bed, the way I always did now. But there it was in the morning light. Dark paint dull instead of glossy, like it had absorbed something it didn't want to reflect. He wasn't inside, at least not that I could see. I watched from my bedroom window, standing just far enough back that my reflection didn't give me away. The car sat perfectly still, engine off, no music, no open windows. It didn't look abandoned. It looked patient. Emma knocked once and came in anyway. "You're up early," she said. "So are you." She shrugged. I couldn't sleep. I didn't ask why. I didn't want to know. Downstairs, my parents moved through their morning routine in familiar, careless loops. Coffee, toast, keys. My mom glanced at the clock and muttered about traffic. My dad complained about a meeting. No one looked out the window. No one noticed the car. When they left, the sound of the door closing behind them felt final, like a seal snapping shut. I waited a few minutes after they were gone, long enough to be sure. Then I stepped onto the porch. Isaac was sitting on the hood of his car, like he'd been there the whole time, like he'd known exactly when I'd come out. "Morning," he said. I didn't answer. Up close, I could see the scratches. They ran along his jaw and down one side of his neck, thin and uneven, already starting to fade. There were more on his hands, crossing his knuckles and wrists, half hidden by the sleeves of his jacket. Careless, I thought, like he hadn't expected anyone to look closely. "You shouldn't stare," he said gently. "People get ideas." "Why are you here?" I asked. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I wanted to check on you." "I'm fine." "I know," he said. "You survived." He studied me instead, head tilted slightly, like he was comparing me to something he remembered. "Elsie didn't mean to scare you," he said. "She's protective. She doesn't like surprises." "She doesn't like losing control," I said. His smile faltered for just a second. "You're perceptive," he said. "That's rare." He leaned back against the car, casual again. You really shouldn't have gone to Old Farmer's Road. I didn't ask for your permission. No, he agreed. You didn't. There was a pause. If you ever want to go back, he said lightly, like it was nothing, I could take you. It's mostly just a hangout. People exaggerate. I met his eyes then. I didn't see red. I didn't see anything unnatural. Just someone waiting to see which way I'd lean. No, I said. All right, he said. I had to ask. He got into his car and drove away without another word. That night, I didn't turn my light on. I sat on my bed in the dark, listening to the neighborhood settle into its usual rhythm. Doors closing, TVs turning on, someone laughing 2 houses down. Then I felt it. That familiar pressure at the base of my skull. I didn't rush to the window. I didn't panic. I knew who it would be. Elsie stood across the street, directly under the streetlight. Her face was turned up toward my window, even though she couldn't possibly see me in the dark. She hadn't bothered to hide the scratches this time. They marked her face and arms, darker and deeper than Isaac's, like she hadn't cared enough to let them heal properly. Or like they meant something. She raised one hand. Not a wave, not a warning. Acknowledgement. I understood then. She then lowered it and stepped back into the shadows, disappearing as cleanly as if she'd never been there at all. I hadn't been spared because I was special. I'd been spared because the rules had been enforced. And next time, it wouldn't be about me. Isaac and Elsie didn't come back right away. Days passed, then more. Long enough that the street began to feel almost normal again. Almost. Another team disappeared. It made the local news in the quiet way these things always did. No urgency, no details. A photo flashed on the screen. A name was spoken once. Then the segment moved on. I watched it without reacting. Across the street, a moving truck arrived. It was early in the morning, its engine loud enough to wake me before my alarm. I went to the window and pulled the curtain aside, already knowing what I'd see. The grieving family was leaving. Boxes stacked on the lawn. The porch chairs gone. The front door propped open like it had finally given up. I sat back on my bed and looked at my notebook. The pages were filled now. Lines, circles, names, places. A map of attention. I could trace Isaac and Elsie's movements across it easily. I could see where Old Farmer's Road fit in. What I couldn't see was what they were. No search result explained it. No article named it. Hellhounds, maybe. Or something older. Or something that didn't care what we called it. In the end, it didn't matter. Knowing didn't change anything, so I stopped researching. Emma burst into my room without knocking, bright and loud like she always was. I'm going outside, she said. I met some new people. They're fun. I nodded, barely listening. She talked about them for a minute, how nice they were, how they actually paid attention to her, how she didn't feel bored when she was around them. I missed the name the first time she said it, and she left before I could ask her to repeat it. I sat there for a moment, staring at nothing. Something felt wrong. Emma? I called. No answer. I stood and went to the stairs. my heart beating a little faster with every step down. From the front window, I could see her in the yard. She was laughing and talking animatedly. There was no one else around. I stepped outside. Isaac stood near the sidewalk, hands in his pockets, his posture relaxed. He looked almost ordinary in the daylight, like he belonged there. Elsie stood a few steps behind him, watching. Emma waved at me, smiling. "Sarah, they're really nice." Isaac didn't look at me right away. Elsie did. She met my eyes first. I understood then why the family stayed, why they waited, and why they didn't fight harder. Because once you're noticed, the choice isn't whether it happens, it's how quietly you let it. And standing there, watching my sister talk to something that had already decided she mattered, I realized the truth I'd been circling since the beginning. The neighborhood doesn't keep people safe. It teaches them how to disappear. And once something notices you, it doesn't forget.